Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Pens and Tea. My name is Carrie and today we will talk about my 5 tips for buying fountain pens online. No, I'm not going to continue to do that voice the entire time because I don't know what that voice is. It just kind of came out. Welcome to today's video where I'm going to talk about some things I consider when buying fountain pens online. There's a lot of things I consider, but there's sort of 5 main ones that I think about. So first thing that comes to mind is ask for photos. So if you had watched my top 5 tips for selling fountain pens online, you will know that one of them is to provide as many photos as you possibly can, as many quality photos as you possibly can. And if you haven't and you are now the purchaser, then ask for them. If they only have 1 or 2 photos, I will not really look at your post. I want to see at least 5. I want to see what the nib looks like. I want to try and get a close-up of the tines to see if they're aligned, if they've been altered, if it's been over smoothed, or if it's, flattened or whatever. I want to see the actual pen body and the pen cap in as many, positions as possible, in many different lightings as possible to see if there's any defects on said pen. It will also depend on price. So if it's a less expensive pen, I'm not as concerned as seeing every tiny little angle of the pen. But if it is a pricey pen, then I definitely want to see what that condition of the pen is in. So when you are purchasing pens online, ask for as many photos as possible. If you're comfortable with the photos they've already provided, beautiful. But if not, do not be afraid to ask for more. If that pen person who is selling the pen does not provide anymore or does not want to provide anymore, then don't buy their pen because chances are something shady. If somebody's trying to sell their pen and you ask for a photo of maybe a specific spot, maybe they mention something in their photo or in the description, but you can't quite get it based on the photo they provide. If they're not willing to provide another one, then they're shady and just don't buy it. Move on to somebody else who will. So ask for photos. Tip number 2, PayPal is your best friend. best friend. So PayPal offers something cool, and that is insurance. So if you use PayPal, there is no charge to you as the purchaser. There will be for the seller. What it means is if you're purchasing a pen from somebody that you've never met before, you don't know who they are, they're totally random, whatever, that trust level between the two of you doesn't exist. Almost all of the time, the seller will want the entire amount of money before they ship the pen, which for you as a purchaser can be a little concerning sometimes. So if you use something like PayPal that has insurance and for whatever reason something happens, they don't ship it, you don't get it, something weird happens, there is insurance via PayPal and you can get your money back. Thankfully, I have never encountered that, nor do I even know anyone who's encountered that, but I pretty much always use PayPal. Occasionally I'll use direct deposit, but mostly PayPal. If you're purchasing from somebody that you know, or you've got a fairly good relationship, maybe you've never met them or something, but you have a different trust level, you've communicated with this person enough, it's totally up to you. Or if, somebody knows this person or something, then you can still use PayPal if you want, and just do friends and family so that the seller does not have a fee included, because the seller is the one that will take the hit, not the purchaser. So that is tip number 2. If you're not 100% comfortable, always have insurance. Tip number 3 when buying a pen online is when you get the pen, clean that pen. Clean it. My goodness. Because here's the thing, right? Even if that pen comes to you clean, and it looks, you know, good. It looks like it's been flushed out or whatever. If you're someone like me who likes their pens very clean, there will always be ink somewhere in that pen. Always. Whether it's, you know, in the grip section, you know, between the top of the nib and where the grip section and feed actually sit. Whether it's in the little metal section that usually, like when the body screws into that, like the metal piece there, you know, there'll be a ring there somewhere. At least flush that pen. Clean it as best you can before you ink it up. Not only will that give you your best experience using the pen right away, but then that also will clean out any gunk that's left in the pen. Because during shipping, any little bit that's left there will get gross. Especially if it's coming from farther away. It could take a while to get to you. I've had pens take as long as a month, 2 months to get to me after it was shipped. So clean. Because you also don't even know what ink they had in there. Maybe there's a little bit of hidden ink that you don't know about, and then now you just put an ink in there and then it reacts and you have a bad experience. Nobody wants that, seller or purchaser. Nobody wants that. One thing I didn't talk about in my selling is to clean the pen. That's just common courtesy, to be honest, which is why I didn't include it in my top 5. But as a purchaser, 100% clean yo pen. So next tip is actually something that I should have mentioned before cleaning the pen, but it kind of like reverted in my mind. Talk to the person selling about any partial refunds or total refunds if the pen arrives in a different condition than you expected. So this is a complicated section because as a purchaser, you want to do the best you can to ensure that you're not throwing your money away. You want to protect yourself. It's totally natural to have these discussions. As the seller, like I discussed in my previous video, my 5 tips for selling fountain pens online. As a seller, it should have been the seller's job to make you comfortable with what you're getting. But as the purchaser, you're going to want to have that topic at hand and already discussed. So if you get the pen, if you get, you know, this Kaweco Sport, for example, and they didn't tell you that there's like a scratch on it or something, then rightly so, you should be upset as the purchaser. You know, if there's like a scratch on the body or something like that, then, you know, you're going to go back to them and be like, yo, what up? You didn't tell me this. This wasn't in the photos and all this kind of good stuff. I want maybe some of my money back. Because the pen functions, it's fine. It's just, it aesthetically has a flaw. The reason why I say discuss it beforehand is because it will save you by the time you get the pen. Because sort of like what I said with the photos, where if they're not willing to send you photos like showing you the flaws, then they're probably shady. That's step number 1 to protect yourself. Step number 2, if you let them know ahead of time that like if there's a flaw here or if there's a scratch or if there's, and I'm not talking like those micro ones that you get just from like putting your pen down on the desk kind of thing. I'm talking like an actual scratch. Like, you know, their cat got a hold of it or something. Then if you tell them like you're gonna want to not come after, like I'm not saying like, you know, have a SWAT team raid their house or anything, but you're gonna like, you know, post back to them and be like, hey, like this is here, what the heck? You didn't tell me this wasn't in your photos and all this kind of stuff. Then they're more likely to either A, stop the sale right then and there. So again, that'll stop the shady. Or B, open up honestly and tell you that there is a scratch on this section of the pen kind of thing and maybe offer another photo before they send it. It's the reason why I say it's tricky is because as a seller, as somebody who sells pens all the time, I never offer refunds. There's no refunds, no partial refunds, no nothing. Because I know as a seller, I have done every bit of due diligence to let you as a consumer know about any flaws. But I recognize that not every other seller does that. So by asking the person, hey, if this is the case, let's discuss this. Then that at least brings it up. They're not at fault for shipping flaws. So if you purchase a pen and it gets lost, damaged, or whatever in transit, that's not the seller's fault. And that is something that you just have to take a risk on as the buyer. If you don't want to take that risk, then pay full price for the pen and buy it from a retailer. Because you've already discussed at this point the purchasing process from them. You've discussed what you're going to pay for the pen. You've discussed shipping if that's there. So you know that you're probably going to be getting a discount on the pen already. So that's just part of the risk that you take as the purchaser. But if you talk about refunds and partial refunds, that gives the seller then that last opportunity to be completely honest. Just know that they're probably going to say no refunds or no whatevers, but gauge it. You know, if you're not feeling this person as a seller, then walk away. Don't buy from them. The seller is going to want to sell their pen more than you're probably wanting to buy the pen. So most people are willing to barter back and forth a little bit. Subset, this is not one of my top 5, just a pet peeve that I have when selling pens online. Do your research, much like the seller is going to. Do your research around like what pens are going for. So if you're looking for like a Kaweco Sport online, look at what retailers are selling it for. Take about 10 to maybe 20% off of that fountain pen. And that is probably what people like myself or anyone else will be listing the pen for if it is in mint condition. So take a look to see if there's any other sellers at their prices, because most of the time, if you come at somebody and say like, hey, I love the pen, I'll offer you this, you know, and if it's like a lot lower than what they've posted on, that's insulting. Go away. You're drunk. So just do your research too. That's a subsect. It's not actually one of my top 5, but it's important to mention. So yeah, talk about the partial refunds and things like that. So now let's skip to number 5. You've got the pen, you've cleaned it out. What's next? Honestly, go back to social media. Post about that pen. If you have Instagram, let's say, and you purchased this Kaweco Sport from Bobby, post about it. Post that you purchased this pen from Bobby. You can @ them on Instagram because chances are you purchased it. Instagram is like the place to be honest, for online pen sales. Post that you got it from Bobby and let people know if it's amazing, if it's beautiful, if it writes like a dream, if you're in love with it, or if you're not. Post that, you know, it came misaligned or that it was scratched or whatever happened. Post about it. Because that way you can say like, hey, I bought it from this person. It does give the opportunity for other people to then know whether that's a trustworthy seller or it's not a trustworthy seller. Now, if the ad or whatever you purchased the pen from said, dude, there's a scratch right on the cap right here, like they're upfront, they're honest, you knew about that before you purchased, then obviously don't bash them when you post about the pen that you got, being like, yo, this was scratched, because you knew about it. So, you know, don't be a troll. But yeah, post about it, especially now that there's this thing called, you know, virtual pen show on Instagram. Check that out if you haven't yet. You know, a lot of the times you'll get the same people selling their pens on that account. And when you click on that account, it takes you to their page, which then you can see their @ or their mentions, things like that. And that can just be part of your research. And if you are somebody that sells your pen a lot, then you're extra incentivized to be completely upfront and honest about the condition of the pen, because people are going to post about it. And if they have a positive response or a negative response, they're likely to say something. In fact, they're more likely to say something if it's a negative experience versus positive. So as the purchaser, post about it. especially if it's positive. If the experience of buying it was positive, if the experience of the pen was positive, like post about that too, because that is equally important and it will help everyone involved. So those are my 5 tips for buying fountain pens or anything really online. It doesn't have to be just fountain pens, but clearly that's why y'all are here, because we fountain pen people. And those are kind of like the top 5 questions that I get most often from people who are buying fountain pens. If you haven't checked out my video yet about selling fountain pens online, do check that out. I'm filming them back to back, so they're really fresh in my mind, which is kind of why I got point 3 and 4 kind of like mixed up there.